What is going on, everybody, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. It is your boy Jay brings a brand new video, and in today's video, guys, we are going to be doing Week 4 NFL game predictions. That's all I'm really doing on the channel right now. I know, I'm sorry, I was trying to get more videos out. Doesn't look like I'm going to be getting a lot more videos out besides these for the next couple weeks. But in the meantime, we are here. Week 4, Week 3 has come and gone. It was a pretty crazy week. I did 10-6 overall on my Week 3 predictions. I originally was 11-5, 11-5 in Week 1 and 2 to 22-10. Now I am 32-16, so I'm right at like 0.5% over 500, which I think is pretty good. I think that's like 75%, right? I checked on NFL Playoff Predictor, the app right here, which I do my predictions, and I'm in the 96th percentile right now. I actually dropped one because I forgot to submit my Thursday Night Football prediction of the Niners over the Giants. I would have got that one right, which was a bit of a bummer because that dropped me like 1 or 2 percentiles alone. But oh well, we are doing pretty good though. Like I said, we are now 32-16, which is pretty good. Last week we went 10-6. We actually had a couple upsets in my predictions last week. My lock of the week, I am now 2-1. My lock of the week last week was the Cardinals, the Cowboys over the Cardinals. That obviously did not happen. I don't think anyone really predicted the Cardinals to beat the Cowboys. And then there were a few other ones. I also had the Commanders upsetting the Bills. I didn't put that in the video. I actually changed that prediction later on the week. That did not happen either. I should have stuck with the Bills over the Commanders. I didn't. I thought the Commanders could upset. And just a few other picks that I really didn't see coming. I know the Jags also, I had them beating the Texans. That didn't happen. Just a few other ones. But overall, not a bad week, 10-6. I'm still waiting for the week we get like 13-14 right. I want to get a few of those this season as well. We've done pretty good, though. We've been very consistent. Last year, I had a couple like 8-8 weeks and 9-7. I don't really want any of those. I said my goal for this season is to get 10 right minimum a week. So far, we've done that 11-11. And 10, so pretty good. Moving on though to Week 4, without further ado, let's just get to the video. So starting off with what could potentially be one of the games of the years this year, the Dolphins at the Buffalo Bills. Both teams look incredible. The Dolphins put up 70 points last week over the Broncos, won 70-20. They could have put up 73 if they wanted to. They decided to be somewhat humble, I guess you could say, and they didn't kick the field goal. And they just decided to go with 70 there and not break the all-time scoring record. The offense looks incredible. I think it's the best offense in the league right now in terms of explosiveness and firepower and just that electric, changing the field in like a single play type of offense. I think it's incredible, the speed and the explosiveness that offense has. Meanwhile, the Bills have looked incredible as well. I know they had a Week 1 start, but these last 2 weeks have been incredible for them. 34-3, I believe, was the final score on the Commanders game. And I actually had the Commanders last week upsetting the Bills. That was kind of my hot take of the week. That was completely wrong. The Bills' defense looks great. The Bills' offense looks great. Kind of like the Bills we thought they were going to look like at the beginning of the season. And they have looked very good. Josh Allen has looked really good. And the defense looks great for the Bills as well. Same with the Dolphins. The Dolphins' defense looks great as well. So who do I have winning this game? This game is going to be a very high-scoring game, I believe. And it's going to be a very close game. Now, I kind of want to side with the Bills here just for the sole purpose that they're the home team. I know it's kind of a lame reason, but I really don't know who to go with. I think it could definitely be the Dolphins. The one thing that kind of scares me about the Dolphins' offensive line, about the Dolphins, is the offensive line. They're going up against a pretty good Bills defensive front, but we've seen with the Dolphins is they get the ball out so fast that the offensive line really hasn't been an issue so far. I think they've only allowed 1 sack this entire season, which is pretty incredible, and some of those weeks they were without Teron Armstead as well. So I mean, really, this game could go either way. It could be, this is one of those games where it could be a 52-49 game, or it could be, some people could be surprised and it'd be 24-20. It could go either way, and I could see either team winning this game. I'm leaning towards the Bills, but I could see the Dolphins winning this game as well just because of how explosive they are. But the Bills' offense has looked really good as well. Stephon Diggs has looked great. Josh Allen has looked great. The Bills' defense has looked incredible. The run defense has looked great. And I think I am going to go with the Bills here. Now, it could go to the Dolphins. I'm not saying it couldn't. I like the Bills a little bit more here, mainly because they have the home field advantage, if that's any reason at all. I do like the Bills, but their defense has looked really good. And I think at the end of the day, I think the Bills' defense has looked a little bit better than the Dolphins' defense. But like I said, it could go either way. I mean, the Dolphins' offense is so good. I mean, they may not even need a great defensive performance as long as their offense is out there scoring touchdowns every drive. But we'll see. I do like the Bills, though, and I do think the Bills are going to be able to get maybe 1 or 2 key turnovers or stops on defense, which could potentially win the game. But I do think it'll be a close game, whether it's a high-scoring or low-scoring game. But I do have the Bills beating the Dolphins. But like I said, it could go either way. Moving on to our next matchup of the day, we have the Ravens taking on the Browns. And the Ravens coming off of a somewhat surprising loss last week to the Colts without Anthony Richardson. Gardner Minshew was the starting quarterback, and he looked pretty decent. He looked all right. He took him to the win, which is really all you can ask for. It was pretty ugly weather there. It was pretty rainy, pretty stormy weather in Baltimore last week. Now they go on the road to the Browns, who have looked really good in these first couple weeks of the season. Deshaun Watson looked much better. The offense looked a lot better. Amari Cooper was getting action, and the passing game was looking a lot better last week versus the Titans. The defense looks incredible. Held the Titans to only 3 points all game, and the Browns have looked really solid. And they're one of my favorite teams this year. The Ravens, like I said, I can't really put too much blame on the Ravens. They are very banged up right now on that offensive line and in the secondary. So I can't really blame too much of that on the loss last week, just purely on the Ravens. Like I said, they are very banged up. But until they get healthier, I have to go with the Browns here. They're still really banged up on that offensive line. I believe Linderbaum and Ronnie Stanley are both out again. I think Marcus Williams is out again as well. So it's just going to be tough against a much better Browns team than the Colts team, especially now with the Browns at the home field advantage. I believe they're out, even if Ronnie Stanley and they get some of their big players back on that offensive front. They're going up against a very good Browns defensive front. They're going to need all the help they can get, and it's going to be rough. And then that secondary for the Browns, the secondary for the Ravens, I think it could be another big passing game for the Browns here and see that passing game rolling again because that secondary is very banged up for the Ravens. But who knows? But I do have the Browns winning this one. It could be close. We could see the Ravens come back. They've looked really good the first 2 weeks of the season, so we could see them come around and pull things out, but I do have the Browns winning this one. Moving on, we have the Steelers traveling to Houston to take on the Texans. The Texans coming off with a major upset win, or at least in my opinion, it was a major upset win over the Jaguars. And the reason I'm calling it a major upset win is not because necessarily it was a huge upset win, which I think it was, but also because the Texans looked great on both sides of the ball. CJ Stroud looked awesome. That offense looked awesome. Tank Dell looked awesome. The receiving core, the O-line even looked pretty good. And then defensively, they looked pretty good as well. And the Jags, their main problem was just inconsistency on offense. And CJ Stroud looked great last week, and now they're heading home for a home game versus the Steelers. A pretty big home game taking on the Steelers, and I am going to go with the Texans. Now, the Steelers coming off of a pretty big win last week over the Raiders. I actually predicted both of these teams to lose last week. Both of them won, but the Steelers look pretty good as well. The offense looked a lot better. Defense is dominant. TJ Watt looks incredible. The defense is great. And the defense has really been the dominant part of the Steelers team. But the offense actually looked pretty good last week. They had a couple of nice deep balls. And, Kenny Pickett seemed to get a lot more comfortable last week. But I do have the Texans winning. I don't know if this is really a hot take or not. I don't really know if this is a bold take. But I think CJ Stroud has looked so good. I think this offense has looked really good, this receiving core. And that is part of the weaker team. One of the weaker parts of the Steelers team is that secondary. And I think we're really going to see a good matchup here. CJ Stroud taking on that Steelers secondary. Now, the one thing that does concern me is this offensive line going up against that Steelers defensive front. The Steelers defensive front is dominant. And that does kind of worry me a lot, how CJ Stroud is going to be under pretty much constant pressure from TJ Watt off of the edge, and it will be interesting to see how he deals with that. Last week he wasn't under a lot of pressure a lot. The offensive line was pretty good, but I do worry this week a little bit about how he handles the pressure from the Steelers defensive front. But I have confidence, and I do think the Texans will pull out a win here versus the Steelers. Next up, we have the Bengals headed to Tennessee to take on the Titans. Now, the Bengals got a win, their first win on Monday Night Football last week versus the Rams. They looked pretty good offensively. They were still a little bit slower. However, Joe Burrow looked better. He looked more comfortable than he has all season. And he didn't hurt his leg and he didn't re-injure it, which is really good. And, they finally got that connection between Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase, which I thought was one of the bigger things of that game. The defense looks great. The defensive front is really good. The secondaries look really well. The Bengals defense has quietly been very good this season. The Titans lost 24-27-3. Either one, they did not look good. Offensively, there's no stability there. The defense is much better, but even the defense did not look great either. Now, this is one of the games where I think the Titans could turn things around here. I think, like I said, they have a very good defense, and I think that defensive front could be a problem for this Bengals offensive line. But the secondary for the Titans is really bad, and I think this could be the week where we finally see that Joe Burrow, how we're used to seeing Joe Burrow, where he's going for 350 yards and several TDs, because we didn't really see that last week. He looked calm, he looked stable, but other than that, it was just kind of consistently good, I guess you could say, last week versus the Rams. I think this is the week where we could see Joe Burrow unleash versus a pretty bad Titans secondary. But like I said, this Titans defense is pretty solid, though. They have a very good defensive front, so that could be some problems for this Titans offensive line. Offensively, the Bengals defense, offensively for the Titans, like I said, they struggled a lot last week, and they're going up against a very good Bengals defense. I do have the Bengals winning this one, but I would not be surprised if maybe they do turn things around here and that the Titans could maybe, push this to be a close game, but at the end of the day, I do have the Bengals winning this one. Up next, we have the Raiders headed to Los Angeles taking on the Chargers. The Chargers got their first win of the season last week in a very close and gut-wrenching win over the Vikings. That was a very close defensive stand by the Chargers. I think a lot of people thought the Vikings were going to win that after they failed on the fourth down conversion. However, the defense stood strong and got the pick to seal the deal. The Raiders coming off of a pretty ugly loss versus the Steelers last week. I was actually a little higher on the Raiders than some people were last week, but after that loss, Jimmy Garoppolo did not look great. Devontae Adams looked like a beast. He had like 15 catches for 150 yards and 2 TDs, something like that. But other than that, The Raiders' offensive line did not look great at all. The defense didn't look great. And the Chargers, meanwhile, on the other hand, their offense looks great. I think the Chargers could put up 45 points versus the Raiders' defense. The main question for me is this Chargers' defense taking on this Raiders' offense. How they can limit Devontae Adams, how they can limit Jacoby Myers, how they can limit Josh Jacobs. That's going to be the big thing for this Chargers' defense. If they can take, they can even limit and contain Devontae Adams, and I think they're going to be in for an easy win. But if they don't, then, we've seen Chargers games before where this defense totally blows it, and it comes down to the defense needing to make a stop, and they can't. Now, last week, I know they made the stop versus the Vikings, and they won it. If the Chargers defense can contain this Raiders offense, then I think it will be an easy win for the Chargers, and that's what I'm going to go with. I think, it could be a bit of a high-scoring game, but at the end of the day, I do think the Chargers are the much better team offensively and defensively, and I do have the Chargers. And I was actually pretty impressed with the Chargers defense last week. I know a lot of people, including myself, were expecting a much higher scoring game than that, but the Chargers defense actually looked pretty solid last week. I know they still have a lot of things to work on, a lot of things to build on, a lot of improvement, but they actually looked better than I was expecting to last week. So Chargers over the Raiders. And then finally, our last AFC versus AFC game, we have the Chiefs headed to the Jets for Sunday Night Football. This could actually be a better game than most people are expecting, and I think it will be a bit of a closer game. I know people are expecting the Chiefs to roll over the Jets, and that could happen. I'm not ruling it out. But this Jets defense is very good versus a Chiefs offense that hasn't struggled really yet this season, but I'm curious to see how it goes up against a great defense. They really haven't been tested yet versus a very good defense, and they looked great last week. I mean, the Chiefs all around, offensively, defensively, they looked great versus the Bears, but I am curious to see how Patrick Mahomes and this new kind of Chiefs offense goes versus the Jets defense, one of the best in the league. Meanwhile, the Jets, offensively, they look horrible, and I really don't think there's any hope for this team until either we see some signs of improvement from Zach Wilson, or they just go ahead and trade for a veteran quarterback or a younger quarterback maybe, who they think could possibly be kind of like the guy who takes the team this year, and then when Aaron Rodgers comes back, sits behind him if they move on from Zach Wilson to be their next generational quarterback. But really, until either one of those moves happens, I don't see any hope for this offense. Zach Wilson has shown such little, if any, improvement from last year. And it really sucks because I was kind of high on Zach Wilson after hearing all the mentor shit that Aaron Rodgers was talking about, and how high Robert Saleh had been on him, but we really haven't seen any of that transpire into the gameplay. So I'm very worried about this Jets offense. Like I said, I think this defense is going to be great. I think if this defense can even limit, Travis Kelce and Patrick Mahomes, I think that could definitely help. But the problem is even if, let's say, the Jets defense does great here and they do limit this Chiefs offense, which I think there's a chance, because really, if they can find a way to kind of limit Travis Kelce, I mean, there's not really any other big playmakers on this offense for the receiving core, and that could definitely help. But even if they do kind of shut down or, limit this offense, really, I don't see any hope for the Jets against a pretty good Chiefs defense. So I'm going to go with the Chiefs here. It's a bummer because I really wanted to see Aaron Rodgers taking this game versus Patrick Mahomes. Unfortunately, we're not going to get to see that, but I do have the Chiefs winning this game to wrap up our AFC versus AFC week. Moving on to our NFC versus AFC game. Starting off, we have a London game, the first London game of the season. We have the Falcons taking on the Jags. I know that sounds like a pretty boring game, and I know there's not going to be many people getting up to watch that game, but I think it could be an interesting game, and I do think it's a big game for both of these teams. The Jags coming off of 2 straight ugly losses. Offensively, they have looked really bad. There's really no offensive stability there, and really the big problem to me is the offensive line. The offensive line really has not looked great at all, and that's kind of been the problem coming into the season. They really haven't, improved or shown any positive signs of growth this season, so that's kind of been the big thing for the Jags, both offensively and defensively in the trenches, and that defensive front has not looked great. Meanwhile, the Falcons have looked pretty good. The Falcons were one of my sleeper teams this year, and I'm proud to say that they have looked pretty good this year defensively. They have been really good. That secondary, I think Jesse Bates was one of the biggest additions of the season to any team, really. And I know that might sound big to say, but he really has been very good for the secondary. Already several interceptions, making big plays with a nice duo with AJ Terrell back there. So this Falcons defense has looked really good, and then offensively, it's not the flashiest offense. It's not, the highest stat sheet offense. Desmond Ridder isn't the flashiest quarterback, but it's getting the job done. And, last week they were pretty limited, only 6 points versus the Lions defense, which kind of surprised me because the Lions defense was really banged up, and I kind of expected it to be a big ground attack for them last week. It wasn't the case, but I do actually have the Falcons rebounding here, taking a win in London versus the Jags. And this game could go either way. It could be a big bounce back week for the Jags as well, because they really need to get going if they want to have a shot. I know it's early in the season, but really this offense has got to get rolling. This was supposed to be one of the better offenses this season, and it looked really good week 1, and since then we have not seen any stability or really even any decent looks from this offense so far. So it's got to be a big bounce back win for the Jags. I personally, though, have the Falcons winning this game. The Falcons team has been really good defensively. They've been really good against the run game. They've been pretty good against the passing game as well. And then offensively, I think, if this offense can take advantage of the run game, the Jags are not that great against the run game. I do have the Falcons winning this game. Could go either way, but I do have the Falcons getting a big win to go to 3-1 over the Jaguars. Next up, we have the Rams taking on the Colts. Both teams, the Rams coming off of a close loss to the Bengals, and then the Colts coming off of a big win, big upset win in Baltimore. And this game, I was actually going back and forth for a while. And I am actually going to go with the Colts on this one. I originally had the Rams winning this one when I did my predictions a couple of days ago, my early predictions. But in my final predictions, I'm actually going to go with the Colts. And for the main reason that this Rams offensive line is really banged up right now, and they really looked very bad last week versus the Bengals. I mean, they really had Matthew Stafford was constantly under duress, constantly under pressure, and it really gave him no time in the pocket. And this is a quietly pretty good, Colts defensive front. And I think if they can keep, and the problem with the Colts is their secondary is really banged up. Or not banged up, but it's not the best secondary. They lost two of their main key pieces this offseason. And I think if they can kind of get that pressure on Matthew Stafford, he's not going to be able to take advantage of that, because this Rams receiving core has been really good. Matthew Stafford does look really good. But if this Colts defensive front can get some problems or get some pressure up there on Matthew Stafford, I think that would be a big win for this Colts team. Offensively, they've looked really, not really good, I'd say, but they have looked pretty decent. And if Anthony Richardson is back, that is going to be a big element to add that RPO kind of QB run and ground game addition as well. So I'm going to go with the Colts here. I think it could be the Rams. The Rams have looked really good. Even last week, they looked pretty decent. It was a bit of a, it was an interesting game last week. They didn't look great. They didn't look bad, though. The Rams have looked good for the first 2 weeks of the season. They could easily rebound here versus the Colts. But if Anthony Richardson is back, which it seems like he will be back, then I am going to go with the Colts. Even if he's not, Ian Gardner-Minshew is there, I still am going to go with the Colts here. And I don't know if it's an upset win or not, but I do have the Colts winning over the Rams. Next up, we have what could be the worst game, or at least the weirdest game of all time. We have the two worst teams in the league right now, hands down. The Broncos, who lost 70-20 last week versus the Dolphins, and the Bears, who lost 42-9 or 42-10. It was a really, really bad week for the Bears last week. I don't even remember the final score, but it was like 45-10, something like that. It was really bad, and I honestly am very torn with this game. Both offenses have looked horrible. Justin Fields has shown it. Justin Fields has almost regressed since he came into the league. He has looked horrible, and it's very disappointing because I wasn't one who necessarily bought into the Justin Fields hype in terms of like the MVP candidate, all of that stuff, but I was at least expecting some big improvements from last year now that he had DJ Moore. And this offensive line has actually been pretty good. A lot of people like to blame this offensive line for Justin Fields, problems and, the constant pressure he's under. But the offensive line has actually been much better than people were expecting. It hasn't been great, but there have been several times where Justin Fields has been in a clean pocket. He has someone, DJ Moore, Darnell Mooney, whoever it may be, downfield wide open, and he will choose to run up the middle and right into the offensive line for a sack. And really, it has been horrible quarterback play all around for Justin Fields. The route reading, the decision making, all of it's been awful. The defense is horrible. The secondary is horrible. The defensive front is horrible. The Bears are, in my opinion, I think the Bears are the second to worst team in the league, only in front of the Denver Broncos, who lost 70-20. I was very, very just surprised watching that game. I mean, I had the Dolphins winning, but I did not expect. I don't think anyone expected it to be 70-20. Same thing. The defense looks horrible. The offense does not look much better, and I think I am going to go with the Broncos on this one just for the sole reason that I think their offense is a little bit better, and I think their defense is maybe a little bit better than the Bears. I mean, maybe, but both of these teams have looked so horrible. I kind of want to go with the Bears just because they have the home field advantage almost. I mean, that's kind of what it's coming down to. I'm going to go with the Broncos just because we've seen more out of this team this season, which isn't saying much, but we have seen some good offensive plays from this team. We have seen some at least offensive stability. Not stability, but we've seen a higher ceiling from this Broncos offense, but really it could go either way. But this is really a must win game for one of these teams. I do have the Broncos winning, but like I said, it could be the Bears. I kind of wanted to say the Bears just because they have the home field advantage, but I'm going to go with the Broncos. I feel like we've seen a little bit more, like I said. I feel like this offense has looked a little bit better than the Bears, but it really isn't going to be a great game, I don't think. But I do have the Broncos winning this game. And then moving on to our final AFC versus NFC game, we have my New England Patriots, who got their first win versus the Jets last week, taking on the Cowboys, who had an embarrassing 28-16 loss versus the Cardinals. I don't think anyone predicted that at all. That was a very, very, very surprising loss to me. The main struggle for the Cowboys was three things. The passing defense was horrible, the run defense was horrible, and the penalties. I saw a stat, and I think they had like 10 for 117. You cannot have that. And then really the run defense was horrible. James Conner was averaging 7 yards per carry, and the passing game allowed some pretty big plays downfield. Michael Wilson had like a 70-yard play to set them up for the go-ahead touchdown, would seal the deal. And Stephon Gilmore really did not embrace that true cornerback one role like a lot of people were expecting him to. and that is definitely going to be a big issue moving forward. It looked like the defense just didn't know how to play without Trayvon Diggs on the field, and Micah Parsons was locked down. That Cardinals offense, very surprisingly, did a very good job at containing Micah Parsons. And then, for a while there in this, I think it was the third quarter, the Cowboys were starting to gain momentum. But like I said, that Michael Wilson reception that went for 70 yards put them up for the go-ahead touchdown to seal the deal. Offensively, same thing. There just wasn't any stability there for the Cowboys, and they got to fix that moving forward. Now, I do think they get the rebound versus the Patriots here, but it will be interesting going up against a much, much, much better Patriots defense and how this offense is going to adjust, because they really struggled last week. So it's going to be interesting to see how this offense goes versus the Patriots defense. But the main question to me is how this Patriots offense goes versus this Cowboys defense, because if there's one defense that I'm much confident in over the Patriots, it is the Cowboys defense. And so I think the big question here is how this offensive line can hold up, because if this offensive line can hold up, I think the receiving corps for the Patriots could maybe do something. I think Mac Jones, as long as he's comfortable in the pocket, I think he might be able to do something against the banged up Cowboys secondary. But the big question is how can they hold up against Micah Parsons and this very good Cowboys defensive front and pass rush? So that's going to be the big question, but I do have the Cowboys rebounding in a win over the Patriots. Moving on to Thursday Night Football, Week 4 kicking off, we have the Packers taking on the Detroit Lions. The Lions coming off of a big win over the Falcons to give them their first loss of the season, and the Packers coming off of a very big 17-point comeback in the fourth quarter to beat the Saints. Very big win for both of these teams this week. The Packers, another home game, and this could be a very interesting game. Now, I wanted to go with the Packers originally. I like the Packers. I think they come off of a big win, a lot of momentum coming into this week versus a very big NFC North game, and kind of a revenge game because the Lions beat and eliminated the Packers last season to knock them out of the playoffs or to keep them from going into the playoffs. So this could be kind of a bit of a revenge game and a big game for Jordan Love taking on the Lions for the very first time. However, very banged up Packers team. David Bakhtiari and Elton Jenkins, the two stable pieces of this offensive line, are already out. Jair Alexander is questionable. He didn't participate Monday or Tuesday. He played limitedly today in practice, or yesterday in practice, Wednesday. And so it's going to be interesting to see if he is good to go. But it's a very banged up Packers team all around, and for that reason I'm going to go with the Lions. I like the Lions already, even if it wasn't banged up. I like the Lions. I think they have a very good offense, very explosive offense, and I think they go in and make a big statement for this win. The Lions defense was really good last week as well, very banged up Lions defense, but I do think the Lions go in and get the dub versus the Packers. Moving on to the Vikings versus the Carolina Panthers, 0-3 versus 0-3. And I don't think I need to talk much about this one. I have the Vikings winning this one. The Vikings offense has looked incredible through 3 weeks of the season. I actually feel bad for Kirk Cousins and this offense. They've looked really good, but this defense for the Vikings has been horrible. The run defense is horrible. The secondary is horrible. And really, this defense all around is one of the worst in the league. I could see the Panthers getting an upset here. The Panthers looked better than they have in previous weeks. Last week, Andy Dalton kind of got that offense rolling. The receiving game was going, and they did look better, but the problem is the defensive injuries for the Panthers are just nonstop. And without J.C. Horn in that secondary, there's really no stability there, and I think Kirk Cousins has a field day versus this very banged up and very bad Panthers secondary. Like I said, could be a good game. This Panthers offense could get rolling against this Vikings defense and make it close, but I do have the Vikings getting their first win of the season, taking on the Panthers. Next up, we have the Commanders at Philadelphia taking on the Eagles. Last week, I tried to be cute, I tried to be bold, and I said the Commanders were going to upset the Buffalo Bills, and last week I was actually pretty confident in it. I thought the Commanders came off of a big win the week before, and the defense looked great, the offense looked great. That was not the case week 3 versus the Bills. They all looked horrible. Sam Howell had a horrible game. The offensive line was horrible, and the defense was even worse. I'm not going to do that again. I'm going to go with the Eagles here in a no-brainer now. I do have faith in Sam Howell and this offense. I think this offense could definitely get rolling again, but it's going to be tough against another very good defensive front, very good secondary, and really one of the best teams, if not the best team in the league right now. Defensively, I think this is a very big test for this defense. Okay, last week they got torched, they got blown out. That's fine. That's against a very good Bills offense. Going up against another very good offense in the Eagles. This defensive front needs to put pressure on Jalen Hurts. They're going up against a very good offensive line. I think this is a very big test for this Commanders defensive front and getting pressure on Jalen Hurts. That's going to be the difference of this game. They need to get pressure and constant pressure on Jalen Hurts in this run game and to make Jalen Hurts get out of the pocket, because Jalen Hurts is very good outside of the pocket as well. But I really don't think, especially how they went last week, I don't think the secondary can hold up against A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith and this passing attack for the Eagles. So they really need to get some constant duress and constant pressure on Jalen Hurts, which is going to be very hard versus a very good Eagles offensive line. But I do have the Eagles winning this one. I'm not going to try to be bold again. I do have the Eagles winning. But like I said, I think it could be a nice kind of rebound game, so to speak, for the Commanders, even if they don't win. But to go out there and at least compete with the Eagles and to show that they are better than what they were last week, which I think would be a big win for the Commanders in itself. Next up, we have the Buccaneers taking on the Saints. Saints and Buccaneers both coming off of big losses. The Saints coming off of a very embarrassing loss to the Packers, giving up a 17-point lead late in the game. However, the bigger concern is Derek Carr. He is going to be out for at least several weeks with that shoulder injury. And then the Buccaneers, kind of what we expect. They weren't really tested the first 2 weeks. They were tested last week versus the Eagles, and they actually didn't look horrible. I mean, I know it was 25-11. Offensively was the main problem, though. There was really no time in the pocket. The Buccaneers' offensive line was pretty bad against that Eagles defensive front. And then same thing, the run game for the run game. Really, the whole defense for the Buccaneers kind of struggled, especially the run game, though. So can they rebound? I don't think so. Even with Jameis Winston in at quarterback, who I actually like Jameis Winston. He's been with the Saints for several years now. He knows that offense. I think they get the win here. I think the Saints have a very good defense, and I think they'll be able to limit Mike Evans. I think they'll be able to limit Chris Godwin and that Buccaneers offensive line. It's going to be an interesting test versus a pretty good Saints defensive front. That's going to be the big thing again, is the Saints defensive front taking on Jameis Winston and that offensive line. But I do have the Saints getting a win versus the Buccaneers. Now, moving on to my lock of the week, Cardinals taking on the 49ers. I was wrong about the Cardinals last week, and I am actually very impressed with them. I don't think this was a fluke. I don't think this win versus the Cowboys was a fluke last week. Now, when I say that, don't think that I mean that they're going to go, 8-9 or 9-8, and they're going to push for a wild card spot. I don't mean that, but I do think Jonathan Gannon is a legit coach, and I think he proved it last week that he is utilizing the skill he has on his team. It's not very much, but I think he's utilizing his team and playing his players to the best of their very limited abilities. And I know it was only week 3, and some people can call it luck, but I do think the Cardinals and Jonathan Gannon proved that they are going to be at least not one of the worst teams in the league. Maybe 4 to 5 to 6 wins, which is much better than what some people were saying. So I do think the Cardinals proved that they can, they're not going to be a team that should be written off every week. With that being said, they are going to be my lock of the week to lose this week over the 49ers. And I know I said that last week versus the Cowboys, and I was dead wrong. And if I'm wrong again, so be it. But I do not see the Cardinals going into San Francisco and beating the best defense in the league, not a banged-up defense, the best defensive front in the league, hands down, and a pretty good secondary as well, a very good secondary as well, and then a much more stable offense as well. And like I said, I do think the 49ers are much better than the Cowboys, and I just don't see the Cardinals going in and beating this 49ers team. Now, like I said, I think the Cardinals prove that they can be a legit team in the sense that they shouldn't be written off every week. And I do think that Jonathan Gannon did prove to some people that he is a legit coach. I do think that win was much bigger than some people are saying. But like I said, I think this 49ers team is so good all around, offensively, defensively, everywhere. It is so good. And I really don't see the Cardinals having a shot here. But who knows? If they can even put up a fight versus the 49ers, then they will have my respect. They already have my respect after that Cowboys win, but I will be tested. It will be interesting to see how this Cardinals team goes up against another very good NFC team. And then finally, our last game of the week, Monday Night Football, we have the Seahawks going into New York. This is going to be a really good game as well, Seahawks and the Giants. Giants coming off of a pretty ugly win versus the 49ers. Not too much offensive stability there, especially without Andrew Thomas and Saquon Barkley. The defense is not great either. The run game ranks 29th ranked right now. Not very good. And the Seahawks coming off of another big win, taking on the Panthers. I'm going to go with the Seahawks here. I actually could see the Giants potentially upsetting here at home, but I think the Seahawks run game is going to run all over. I think Kenneth Walker is going to run all over that Giants defensive front, and I think it's really going to be a very explosive night for the Seahawks offense. I think they're going to spread the field around Jackson Smith and Jigba, DK Metcalf, and Tyler Lockett, and then offensively, that's going to be the big question: is how can this Giants offense respond? Can they finally get some consistency and get some stability? Or are they going to look like the Giants that have been playing the last 3 weeks and, really look inconsistent and just really not look that good? We will see. But I do have the Seahawks taking the W versus the Giants on Monday Night Football. All right, guys, that is going to do it for me. I hope you all enjoyed. Let me know in the comments what you guys agreed with, what you guys didn't agree with, why you didn't agree with it, and what you think is going to happen. I hope you all enjoyed. Thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe if you don't want to miss out on any future videos. I know I keep saying in all my videos that I'm going to try to get more videos out throughout the week. I'm just very busy right now with school and sports. I'm going to try again this week to get some college football videos out on Saturday, or maybe like another football video, kind of like, preparing for week 4, kind of like, some big updates and injury reports and all that. Maybe that would be actually a good video I could try to do on Saturday before Sunday. I will see what happens, though. I am an Ohio State fan, so maybe I could get some videos out on Ohio State, see how they're doing, or just college football in general. Ohio State had a very big win last week versus Notre Dame. I could do like a reporting on college football and how the season, or how the week looks for college football at the end of the night. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. But thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss out on any future content. It's been your boy, Jay Lay, and I'll see y'all in the next one. Peace out, everybody.